can be only one podcast, and may it be the Prince of the Universe. Hi, folks, I'm Matt.
And I'm Wes.
Hey, we got some books to talk about here.
Man, it's the library lounge tonight.
These are the last three from the collection you gave me, and I did them all together because they made sense, and they overlap, as you would know, especially the Eric Bischoff and the Rise and Fall of WCW. There are two viewpoints there on a lot of that. So yes, and it was really good to read those back to back. Now, unfortunately or fortunately, Vince Russo's his book Forgiven was mainly written to cover the WWF. He does talk a little bit about WCW, but he keeps saying, I'm going to save that for another book.
Right.
So what was his second book called?
I didn't enjoy his first one. I thought it was...
I think it's garbage too, but so we're going to talk about it.
He could have named it Full of Crap rather than Forgiven.
That is exactly what I was thinking about. Because I don't care if you wrote a second one, because the first one is it's all about me. I mean, yeah, it's your biography, but at the same time, well, anyway, he's writing this as he is, at the time, he was a manager of a CD warehouse in Atlanta, Georgia. That's what he says he's doing right now as he's writing this.
Yeah, that was before TNA started too.
Yeah, so it was, before TNA or as TNA was starting.
Yeah,
he was just working as a manager of CD warehouse because I guess he couldn't get another job, and he'd write this book in the back room when there weren't many customers. He's the manager. I guess he just had everyone else walk the floor.
Sure.
Because every once in a while he'd make a comment about customers. You know, this job would be great if it wasn't for the customers. No, he didn't say that, but
I've heard that before.
I've heard that before. Talks about him being a Christian now.
Yes.
So goes back and edits the book in italics on if he said something mean-spirited or not, and how bad he feels about being mean about it. Again, questionable. If he's telling the truth there. But there are a lot of claims here, and I want you to basically... he says he hates to write. He hates to write. Well, if you have one book planned and another, you're writing this book, you have another book planned, and you hate to write...
And your claim to fame is a
writer? Yeah. I don't know. He said this is how he got into wrestling, which usually is an interesting part. You know, how wrestlers got into wrestling. Growing up, who were their heroes? What did they do when they were a kid? You know, what was it? Chris Jericho said that he and his buddy from high school had a card, had different they acted out different wrestlers.
They did a talent show, I believe.
Yeah, but they would do it just on their own, just having their own little shows, being their different characters. I was like, that's the stuff I like to hear.
Sure.
About the Hardy Boys used to be their own little tag team called High Voltage or whatnot, and they had their own moves and everything. That kind of stuff's inspiring because we all pretended to be kids like that. His was he attended a show at a high school gym with 50 people in attendance and realized he was destined for wrestling. And then he moves on to the next thing. So that's just and he has 2-page chapters too. I wrote here too, not very long-winded.
Well, he said he didn't like to write.
He said he didn't like to write. He does praise Vince McMahon a whole lot.
Of course,
almost like, please give me a job again. I kind of felt like it's almost like I think Vince may read this. So let me say a lot of nice things about him. Says he loves crazy fans.
I doubt that.
What
is a crazy fan?
Well, I'm guessing just these crazy wrestling fans, I guess is what he meant. And I'm going to say something to that. He definitely can connect to fans. He makes himself available. He talks to people like that. He tries to present himself to be lovable to the fans. He tries to get the fans' support on things. It seems like that. I don't know if he's doing a good job, but
I don't think he did a very good job of endearing himself to the wrestling audience.
Yeah. As he's talking about, I don't know.
I think the difference between this, let me jump in this.
Go ahead.
Is when Vince Russo rose to power and when wrestling was really getting exposed in the late 90s and people realized he was becoming a major player. Then he went to WCW. He wanted that to be out. I mean, you look at somebody like Pat Patterson, who was a major influence on the business. he was a TV character as a stooge, but it was a comedy character. I
Right.
mean, Pat Patterson gave a lot more to the wrestling business than Vince Russo did, as far as you take his whole career from starting in, when he was in San Francisco and everything.
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of Russo's problem is he wants to be loved rather than he doesn't understand. I don't think he understands the importance of being respected in that line of work.
No, because he said he doesn't have a problem with people judging him, but he wished instead of saying Vince is an imbecile, they should say it's my opinion that Vince is an imbecile. He said he wished they'd be a little bit more honest that way and just say Vince is an imbecile and leave it at that. I was like, you need to learn how to take criticism then.
Well, I think his body of work has not aged very well. He was given a certain amount of rope to be a cowboy with in the WWF.
Right.
But, and I'm not saying he killed WCW by any means. I'm not about to say that. I'm just saying when he got to WCW, you saw just how bad some of those ideas were.
Yeah, no, and we'll get to, the WCW stuff he kind of paints with a broad brush because, again, he keeps saying I'm going to talk about that later. Says that he was so smart because everyone wanted to work for Vince, and they were trying to write letters to Vince, but he wrote a letter to Linda McMahon, the real boss, and pats himself on the back. And when he went to work for the magazine.
Correct.
And he didn't like what his bosses were doing, so he went over their heads to Linda and complained to Linda McMahon. And got entitled on them to Linda, and Linda got them in trouble. Then he's like, oh, and then they were all pissed at me. Well, you know what? You should have been doing your job, buddy. No, they're pissed at you because you went over their head. You probably didn't go to them. They probably yelled at you, hurt your feelings, and then you went crying to Linda McMahon, and that's why they're pissed at you. And then he eventually got him fired. He pats himself on the back because he was a good employee.
Well, I mean, he never has spoke very highly of much of the hierarchy of WWF, and I'm not saying that he should speak glowingly of that because that's kind of a snake pit of personalities, and you have guys that have been in that business for decades, and he is green, and he's trying to come in, and I just think that he handled himself once he got a lot of notoriety. I think he did a lot of damage to his product.
Well, there's a lot of being in the right place at the right time for him, which he acts like it was just his witty nature and just go get him attitude that got him cut in. But the boss of the magazine got fired 8 months into him being hired. He went for his position, and he said, well, what makes you kiss this? Well, Linda McMahon personally hired me to be here. He said, so I think that's pretty good. He was dropping her name and impressed him and said, oh, Linda thinks you're good. And Linda was like, hey, he seems like a great guy.
He's a worker. That's
nice
what wrestlers
kid.
do. They work.
Yeah. And so that's how he got there. But, now he's the CEO or the chief editor of, the magazine under 8 months. Look how awesome I am. He loves Shawn Michaels and the Clique. He said the Clique was fine. They weren't bad people. It's the first time I've ever seen anyone defend the Clique.
Well, I think he liked them because they were such big stars. He didn't have to do a whole lot for them.
That's true.
He didn't have to make them. They were those guys
already made, already big,
already over.
Hunter,
everybody was made in that group at that point.
That's true. He said that Vince McMahon needed him more than he needed Vince. I mean, he makes comments like this all the time. That Stone Cold ran his speech by him, his Austin 316.
Correct.
He went to Vince. That's true. He went to Vince for, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's
what
Vince,
he said. Vince, what do you think about this? And then he goes, he said, Austin, he went, I think that's going to be big. He said, I think we're even going to make T-shirts of it. And Vince McMahon the next day is like, what's this Austin 316? He said, Vince, it's going to be the biggest selling thing ever. And he didn't believe me, but it was. I was like, I don't know of anyone else who would back that claim up. And there's a lot of those claims that he makes.
Well, a lot of people like to be the father of success.
So was he? It seemed to me, and from the outside, I can't remember. It's probably Rise and Fall of WCW when they kind of mentioned Vince Russo from WWE. They said Vince was good at coming up with an idea, But Vince McMahon, Russo was good for coming up with ideas, and McMahon would basically iron those out.
Correct.
And that's how they worked.
Right.
Because if you let him go unchecked, then none of his stuff makes sense and everything's crazy.
Nothing has a good ending.
Yeah. But Vince McMahon was there to kind of iron out the details, smooth things up, smooth some of the rough edges off.
Right, and I think that's what's great about Russo. I think he does have a lot of good ideas. I think once he got the ability to, instead of being the manager of CD Warehouse, he just was like the king of all CD warehouses. That kind of mentality, it killed it.
Right. Now in the Hardcore History book, it claims that, this ECW is where WWF got their idea for the Attitude Era. Is this true or false?
I would say a lot of wrestling got a lot of ideas from ECW.
Vince Russo says absolutely not. He hardly even watched any ECW. He didn't even really know those people are there. It was his idea for the Attitude Era, not ECW fans trying to claim it.
I guarantee he saw Steve Austin cut that promo at 4 o'clock in the morning. With that long blonde hair. I'm certain of that. Now,
he did tell the story, and I knew he would, because I've heard the story before, that Vince McMahon told everyone in the room, this is, a bunch of his people, right? Amen. They need more people like Vince Russo, because he's doing great ideas, having great things there at that magazine. And I know that's true because what's his face backed that up in
a lot of guys have backed up that story.
An interview, because like this guy, no, what's his name? I forgot his name now.
Pritchard has backed that up. Ross has backed it up.
Who?
Jim Ross.
Jim Ross, yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys.
And they just looked at him going, no, Vince McMahon. No, McMahon. This is not.
Well, I think they were taking it back.
Cornette.
Cornette backed it up.
Oh, yeah, Cornette backed it up. It was really funny. I think this little pissant, he just.
Sure.
Now we're getting it from his angle, and it was like, everyone else needs to bend the knee. And he said, finally, Vince McMahon sees the truth. The truth that he is the way.
And I do think
to
that
salvation.
I think Russo was very strategic and in getting involved in the wrestling business to the level he did. And I think that timing was incredible for him. And I do think that he was a major success going forward. I think Russo did a lot of good in the beginning.
He's claiming that at the time of the television wars, if WCW would have called him, and if they would have taken him, they would have won out. They would have run Vince McMahon out of business. Eric Bischoff was a fool. I guess that there was rumor going around they may hire him. He's like, he was just an idiot, and so he didn't hire me. I could have won the wars with them. By the time I got them, he said it was just a broken, a broken shell of a company. I tried to do it. My hands were tied. Yada yada yada. Then he says, that's for another book that I don't want to read.
Yeah, that's.
He acts like he was the number 2 guy. Now, I've heard this one. He took credit for the Montreal screw job. Of course, a lot of people are taking credit for that. Of course, he takes credit for it, too. It was all me. I'm so sorry. I was the one that told Vince this is what we should do.
Right.
I mean, there's so many stories about what went on behind, who was the mastermind, who knew, who did not know, that I don't think we'll ever get the true. I don't think anyone will ever know the true story to this.
No, I think Brett and Vince will go to their graves with it.
Probably so. He blames Bret Hart, says Bret Hart was selfish, stuck up, Shawn was just trying to be nice and everything. But like I said, again, defending Shawn Michaels, putting the heat on Bret Hart, so I guess he wanted to be friends with, I don't know, Shawn Michaels.
Shawn is born-again Christian, so maybe that had some of the underlying revisionary history in that.
Maybe. Said that Owen Hart had called him after the screw job and asked him to talk to Brett for him because Brett was threatening to disown him as a brother if he stayed with the company. But yet in Brett's book, he says, Owen said, hey, should I quit? I mean, I should be done. He said, no, you go ahead and keep your career. It's a business.
Yeah, that's preposterous. I don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah, but Russo's story is Owen Hart called him saying please call him Vince. He's threatening to disown me as a brother because I'm staying with the WWF. It's like, that is in direct conflict, contradiction with what Bret Hart said. So, I mean, you start smelling what the Russo is cooking, and it ain't lovely.
Yeah.
The Highway to Hell SummerSlam, it sucked because Austin and Undertaker didn't listen to him, and they didn't make the match out of
Austin
hate or
and
respect.
Undertaker didn't have good matches most often. That was
Okay.
They've talked about that their chemistry in the ring just was not good, and just the way it is. Some guys just don't have good
Just don't match
matches,
up.
which is
Yeah.
hard to believe as good as matches.
Because
as
they both have good matches on their own.
Brett had good message with Austin. He made Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Brett had good matches with Taker. So you can look at it that way and go, well,
Well, he's a better worker though, probably.
right.
Than
I
both
mean,
of
I'm just
them.
saying, like, some guys just don't click. Doesn't mean that's.
Well-
I don't think Vince Russo was going to be the Pat Patterson in a hot finish.
Yeah. He claims there were no team of writers back then. It was just him doing everything. That was all his brilliance you saw during the Attitude Era.
It was just him and Cornette for a while. Then he brought Ed Ferrara in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's true.
Okay. So I didn't know. I don't know what's true and what it's Russo. I don't know what's true and what's
Right?
not.
Yeah. I mean they were. Well, I mean you got to think they had one TV show at that point too. This
Right.
is years before. That's why he left, was because of SmackDown.
All right. So, well, yes, he does say that because it was
Right.
just too much and it broke him.
Correct.
He says it was his idea for DX to wage war against WCW. Says that it was his idea to get Mike Tyson for WrestleMania 14.
Whose idea was it to put Owen as a blue blazer?
I don't know about that.
Does he talk about
Oh,
that?
it was his idea when Rocky Maivia came in around. He said, you should just call yourself The Rock and talk about yourself in the third person. That was him who planted that genius.
Well, Jim Ross says he came up with that because he worked with Deion Sanders in Atlanta, and the way Deion would talk about himself as prime time in the third person. That's
Really?
yeah. So
That's so interesting.
yeah, it's the wrestling business.
Claims there are many times he went, toe to toe on Vince McMahon. McMahon was mad about something. He said, "This is going to be right. You'll just wait and see." And he was proved right every time. And when the ratings went up, and whenever that happened, McMahon would just he'd just get so mad that he was wrong and Russo was right, and that happened almost every week. Okay, all right, good.
Is that
good
worth
to know.
writing about?
Yeah, it is for him because he's got to say something.
I mean,
about it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's just it's a prophecy of Vince Russo rather than, dig into a storyline rather than just these giant ones.
Yes, exactly. Told another one. Here's another one here. When he was under the pressure of writing for both shows, when it started hitting him, he just was sobbing to Vince McMahon in his office, and Vince McMahon hugged him and says, "I love you." It's very touching because Vince McMahon's all heart, and I can see this happening too. That's a nice big hug.
I love you, pal.
Claims that you're fired. Claims that after he left, the only big star to come out of the WWF was Kurt Angle. That was the only one. Now, this is written at, when was this? 2000?
It was early 2000s.
Early 2000s when he wrote this? Maybe. So, Kurt Angle was the only one at the time? Surely there were others. I just don't remember I forgot to look it up.
Well, I mean, you can say that, but that's not true. I mean, he can say that.
He was the one that discovered the Hardy Boys and told Vince McMahon, you should hire him. I didn't hear any about this in the Hardy Boys
right. The Hardy Boys
autobiography.
say Scott Hall had a lot to do with that because he loved working with Jeff.
Yeah, yeah. They said that the people and the wrestlers who hate him, they hate him because he's honest. That's why they hate him.
As we can tell by all this so far. We're swimming in honesty.
Gave Triple H the name The Game. He said, you should go by The Game. And he knew he was going to be a big star when no one else believed in Triple H.
Well, he says that because his claim is, he believed in Hunter when Hunter was Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I mean, I think Hunter had a high ceiling, but that was a rotten gimmick.
There's no way you would have said that's the guy that's going to take this company to new heights.
He was not going to be a blue blood doing it. So, is there some truth to that? Sure, there's some truth to it. But, Hunter was I don't think it's Vince Russo.
He blames the talent at the time when everything was swaying to WCW. He blames that on JR. JR just couldn't sign contracts enough to keep him. That's why talent went.
I don't think JR had anything to do with how much he could pay someone if his budget is so much. That's it.
I don't know. That's what he was saying, and that he was very instrumental in bringing Chris Jericho to the WWF. Which Chris Jericho, in his autobiography, sadly, no mention of Russo, and it was his idea to do a tribute to Owen Hart on the day after his death. That was all Vince there because he's all heart. So
my goodness,
this
I forgot how bad this book was.
This was I just stopped taking notes and just start writing down all these faults, these huge claims.
Okay,
this book is garbage, like you said. It's garbage. I don't even suggest anyone read it. We just gave you the Cliff Notes. You can send me a thank you card. But, the whole time you're reading, you're going...
They may send you a thank you email.
Thank you email. But the thing is, though, it's just one big daydream of... It's like some of these are probably kernels of truth.
This is my point in where he's done
out.
so much damage to the good that he actually did. The 3 years when he worked for Vince and climbed that ladder and paid his dues and, achieved a lot of important stuff.
Right.
I'm not saying he shouldn't have left to go make more money for WCW either. My God, anybody that doesn't leave their job to go make more money somewhere else, I would say is pretty foolish.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is.
Again, not much about WCW, but I will say this. I do believe because I listened, because after I read this, I went on YouTube, right? And I told you, I listened to shoots.
Sure.
From Vince Russo or other wrestlers on him. Some wrestlers do like him. They laugh because he probably was a fun guy. He's a likable guy, obviously. Not everyone hates him. A lot of wrestlers loved him. One thing I get that he was trying to get over in the WCW, because since we're talking about WCW here, is that he tried to give everyone a shot, everyone some limelight.
He did the same thing in WWF.
Right.
Which is great.
That was his thing. And everyone needs a storyline. Everyone needs a character. And Disco Inferno was a big fan of Vince Russo. And, obviously, because when you're Disco Inferno, what else are you going to be doing? But
Disco sucks.
Mid-carding all your life. But, but it is true. You do want everyone to get their shot to shine. If they don't, then they're gone,
Sure.
So I'm sure there is some likable parts of him, but you're right about this book. This book is all fantasy.
It is one of the worst wrestling books you can read.
Absolutely, and you should have known that because it says Vince Russo on it. All right, so Eric Bischoff.
We're going straight into Bischoff now? All right.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Unless you have anything to say about Vince Russo, actually. I think I'm done.
I just think that he has done himself no favors over the past 20 years.
No, he hasn't.
None.
Yeah, none. And if he would have kept quiet, if he would have been more humble and said, "These are my ideas, but thanks to Vince McMahon's genius, here's what he brought to the table, and it worked." Maybe like if he made it more of a team effort and just left it at that, I think more people would have more respect for him.
Well, yeah, and I think part of
that part is true. It seems.
Well, you got to look at it. Wrestling is very much it's a unionized, non-union way, because back in the day, in the territory days, if someone lost their job, like a booker lost their job, a booker is who's in charge of everything. The new person would bring in their crew of guys. Like when Dusty took over in NWA and Crockett, he brought his guys with him. He wanted Magnum. He wanted Barry Windham. He had these guys that were his guys.
Which makes sense.
Correct.
Because those are the people you work with. Those are the people what their limits are.
Anybody in management knows you need to you got to bring your team, build around that. The problem is Vince had Ed Ferrara. That's the only guy he brought with him. Now, granted, he made friends with some of these other people, but he never had a wrestling guy that really believed in him, other than Jeff Jarrett.
I know. Jeff Jarrett couldn't stop believing in him.
Jeff Jarrett could not stop.
Could not stop, because I did see the...
and Lord knows how people feel about Jeff Jarrett's run as a performer.
Oh my gosh, I hated him when he was Slapnuts. So, I mean, in fact, one of the biggest turnoffs we'll talk about TNA for a minute here. One of the biggest turnoffs of TNA was that he was the champion. I did not like him as a wrestler or as a character. I was like, why is he? And then I realized that he had, it was his money, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's basically run. So, yeah, when it's you run it, buying it, I guess you get to wear the strap. That's one of the perks of paying the checks there. So,
yeah, of course.
But I was like, but he's a terrible champion. He's a terrible champion. He's not a likable. He couldn't get a likable character going, or believable character. In my opinion, do you have a different opinion of Jeff Jarrett?
I think that his very initial run in the WWF in like '95.
I wasn't watching back then.
Right. Well, I think that after that, I think everything was a law of diminishing returns. I did think his best character after that was his second run with WCW when he had his short hair and he was calling everybody slap nuts and hitting them with guitars, because at least that was different.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, he just had a lot of heat for. There's just a point where you want people to get in the ring and they hate you for that reason, not get in the ring to hate you because they're just so tired of looking at you.
Right.
I get it to a certain degree, but it's kind of like somebody saying sit down and shut up at an independent show. It's cheap.
Now, in the book, I thought, now just think about this. He does love Jeff Jarrett, thinks he's super talented. Obviously, he gave him a job at TNA, but they don't talk anymore, or as of that book?
They've had a pretty up and down relationship.
Okay, because as of the book, he said, I just wish I could hear from him again. I just haven't heard from him so long.
Yada, yada.
So I forgot about that. That was kind of put in there. And, of course, you could see the same awful things going on at TNA after a while. They just kind of lost their compass and lost their mind. And there's not a book about TNA, is there?
I guess they're not going to write one until it's over.
The rise and fall. Or TNA still going on?
It's called Impact Wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Impact Wrestling. Mm-hmm. Oh, I did not know that. See, I thought they were done.
Yep.
So they're still okay. So, well, I mean, they've fallen because obviously they ain't on TV.
Well, they're on some channel now.
Oh, I see. This I did not know.
Yeah, they're on one of the millions of channels that you can get.
Wow, they're still kicking.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know NWA has its own little online thing going on, and the Smashing Pumpkins, Billy
Corgan owns it. Yep.
What? I didn't realize he was a big wrestling fan.
Yep.
If you have the money, if you're going to buy something, it's got to be NWA, right? It's got the history behind it.
Well, I think that there's a big story. Man, we're jumping all over the place.
I know. We're going to wrap this one up and just do another episode for Bischoff.
So I just think if you pay attention to go back to the TNA thing, he was doing a lot of funding of that himself.
Yeah.
And there's been a litigation about it where he thought he basically owned the company, and then there was some rule that they pulled out in paperwork. He kind of got swindled out of it.
Oh, Jarrett did?
No, Billy Corgan did.
Billy Corgan. Oh, of TNA.
Yeah, this was like in 2016. I'm sure somebody knows the dates better than I do. But yeah, so I think that left a pretty sour taste. But music guys, Rick Rubin, the famous producer for Chili Peppers, Beastie Boys, everybody, he backed Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the early 90s with Cornette. I mean, that was his money. So music and wrestling do go together.
Go together, yeah. But, I mean, if you're going to buy something, buy NWA, right? Big name behind it.
Well, he's a smart guy. He owns the Smashing Pumpkins name. So
good for him. Good for him.
The brand. So he bought the brand.
Do you watch NWA? Have you
I watched it a little bit. I mean, I think it's a studio product. It's much more of a 70s, 80s vibe to it.
It does, but I think which matches its style because of what the NWA is. It's kind of
I don't think you need to try to make a product that competes with everybody else.
That looks the same as everything else.
Well, and if it's not going to be any better, if it just looks like a cheaper
version of something we have in
somebody
WWE.
told me a long time ago, if you buy cheap, you buy twice. And I think that if you try to just bootleg whatever is popular, it's gonna after a while it's Food Club.
Yeah, no, that's
Shasta,
right. No.
not Coke or whatever.
That's right. So. Sam's Choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Sam's Choice was not the Vince Russo book. Sam would burn that book.
No, that's more like Dirt Cheap even passes that up and says, "No, that's all right. We're good. We're good. What you got here? Forgiven novels? No, we're good. We're good." All right, so that's it. We'll stop it there with just Vince Russo. We'll pick up next time with Eric Bischoff and the rise and fall of WCW. Next time on Princes of the Universe.